For more than 3 years, Manipur has remained one of India's most volatile internal security challenges. Despite heavy deployment of security forces, the violence has not completely subsided. Now, a fresh flashpoint in Senapati district has prompted the centre to significantly alter its security strategy in the state. Following recent clashes outside an Assam rifle camp, the CRPF has deployed nearly 100 bulletproof vehicles in Manipur. Security personnel have now been instructed to move only in protected convoys in sensitive areas. Two specialized CoBRA battalions have been deployed for jungle operations with a mandate to dismantle bunkers and secure vulnerable routes. These are not routine adjustments, they reflect the seriousness of the security situation on the ground. But Manipur's challenges do not exist in isolation. Beyond India's eastern border, Myanmar is witnessing one of the most dramatic internal conflict in its modern history. The military junta is steadily losing ground to ethnic armed groups and pro-democracy forces, while reports suggest hundreds of Myanmar soldiers have crossed into neighboring countries. For India, this is not merely a crisis across the border, it has direct consequence for the security of the northeast. Chinese are also present. The collapse of the state authority in Myanmar threatens to increase cross-border movement of armed groups, weapons, refugees, while insurgent organizations operating along the frontier could find new opportunities to regroup. Adding another layer of complexity is China's growing influence. Beijing today enjoys significant leverage with several armed groups inside Myanmar. With instability in Myanmar growing, Chinese influence across India's eastern neighborhood and continuing unrest in Manipur security. Experts believe that India is facing a far more complex challenge and simple law and order problem. It is an evolving regional security landscape. The question is no longer just about restoring peace in the state. It is also about whether the unrest in the state is becoming part of a much larger geopolitical challenge unfolding across India's eastern frontier. For example, the Assam Rifles has been attacked by a breakaway faction of a Naga group. And on all these issues, we are going to discuss what is the implication for Manipur of all the developments that is taking place across the border. On this issue, I am joined by Brijesh Pandey, input editor of News9. I am also joined by Dr. P.K. Mishra. Thank you, sir. General Sudhakar ji and Suhas Chakma. But first to you, Brijesh, today we are doing two things. First, this unprecedented attacks on Assam Rifles, which have taken place after years. Not a blockade, not a pushback, not of women surrounding them, but attacks on them. One, and secondly, the sort of article that Suhas wrote really fired my imagination, the sort of Chinese influence in Chittagong hill tracks and the sort of instability that is being witnessed in Rakhine state and its entire impact on Northeast.
Well, Karthikeya, I think one of the biggest problem which the government's approach towards solving the problem in Manipur has been that it has kind of tried to box us into thinking that it's just a law and order problem, or like it is a fight between two ethnicity and it is completely related to that. Now it's three, but it's like completely related to first Kuki and Meitei and now Kuki versus Naga. And the fact of the matter is that that any fight or any instability in the northeastern states, especially Manipur and others, cannot have a localized impact. It has to have an impact of what is happening in Myanmar. It has to have the kind of the growing power or the growing influence which China is exercising. And there is no way you are going to or divide the two or take one in its isolation. It just doesn't work like that. The fact of the matter is that Assam Rifle has been facing a lot of blowback. Now, the things have come to a situation where, snipers are being deployed to take shots at the forces. And now CRPF has to get, 100 bulletproof vehicles and now you have to move into convoy. I'm sorry to say, but it doesn't, it gives a very good picture or a sense that, that we are in a commanding position per se. Okay. I think it's an extremely scary situation.
Okay. General Sudhakar ji, Assam Rifles being targeted by a breakaway Naga faction operating from Myanmar.
I totally fully agree with what Brijesh has said. It's an unfortunate part, but I only hope and pray that certain remedial measures will be undertaken by the relevant agencies. The broader or the larger picture is there is a bigger game plan in place, and the bigger game plan. So far, I always used to say, as per my analysis, there is an intersection of sphere of intersection between three very major components. One is the United States, the second is the China, and the third is the Islamic fundamentalism. Now, since Manipur is coming into the foreground, the Islamic fundamentalism actually it gets takes a backseat towards Bangladesh side, and however, USA and China remain in the main stage. But in the instant case, I have been studying since morning. What is actually coming out is a very shocking and scary kind of a development taking place. There is a big game plan undertaken by China and its support to the Tatmadaw. Tatmadaw is the military wing of the government, and they also have a thing called as Myanmar Defense Alliance, some army, NDMAA, who actually takes control, who are the founding member of the Kachin army, also the founding member of, they have a Chin army, and now they are collaborating with Arakan army. There is a huge complex kind of a dynamics which is evolving in past 1.5 to 2 years, where China has gone absolutely hammer over tongue and trying to do couple of things in order to establish its predominance in Myanmar. Be mindful of the fact Myanmar is a country which had a pro-democracy kind of movement during 88, 87, 88. They had a large number of people who got killed, and the Western alliances they had imposed very serious sanctions, economic and also otherwise economic, non-economic sanctions. Their leanings had changed to China, but China came down so heavily, put them into such a kind of a trap, not only the debt trap of everything, diplomatic trap, they put them into constitutional trap and the political trap. So virtually Myanmar could not do anything or move anything without the concurrence explicit approval of China. That was the year in 2004 where a top secret document was written by a Burmese officer in Burmese language, and which has been referred to, showing you through your camera. This is the book, The Great Game East of Littner.
In fact, I've read this. I've read this book. Let me take opening. It's a very good book. In fact, it reminded me
And
of this
page
book.
number 306, it brings out how the current strategy of Myanmar has shifted to America simply to gain the IMF loan, World Bank loan,
Okay.
and turning the
General, I'll come back
like
to you. Just let me take opening comments from everyone, sir. Just let me take opening comments from everyone. Dr. Mishra, why is Assam rifle being targeted? Why aren't we taking enough steps so that these breakaway factions don't, dare to target AR, which is the pivotal
Yes,
force in Northeast?
Karthika, I can tell that it is not only at Assam Rifle Camp at Nagataku, which was attacked by ladies and other people, particularly by the group of one of the group of NSCNIM. It may be the Eastern Flank group, or and I go back what Mr. Ajit Doval has stated. He has warned the NSA of Myanmar, particularly in the BIMSTEC meeting. He has clearly stated that Myanmar is keeping this NSA in Kaplan, so are also NSA Eastern Flank groups, and they are interfering in Manipur. And he has told that this should not be allowed. And Mr. Ajit Doval has very categorically warned the NSA of Myanmar. What I can tell that this is it is not only at Nagathapu camp of Assam Rifle which was attacked, and few vehicles were burnt. You go back to 6th July, what has happened in Ukhrul? It was another attack on Assam Rifle. It's all that is what CRP has now taken this lesson to have so many numbers of bulletproof vehicles, because it's very difficult to have movement in those areas on foot without taking cover. But I can tell you what is happening in Kamjong border. Go back to boundary pillar 101, 102, and 100. And it is all happening because the militants from Myanmar, they are penetrating, and several times they have attacked in Kamjong in those areas. And I can well tell you, Assam Rifle should learn a lesson from both of the attacks, and they have to be very careful, as CRPF has already. They are getting a lot of women constables who are also 100 BP vehicles, and also you see we have 320 companies of CRPF in Manipur. Nowhere in none of the states we have 320 companies. And this is what is in Manipur. We cannot control Myanmar border. You see, the China inroads, it is not only there in Chittagong hill tracts. They have also, you see, they are also penetrating, and they are penetrating due to this deteriorating condition of the deteriorating situation of Myanmar. So we have to be very careful for the Chinese axis, because of what China is going to play. Our northeast is boiling. One axis is Myanmar, the other axis is Bangladesh. Chittagong hill tracts again. It is coming up
I'll come to that.
as it was
I'll
there.
come to that. I'll come to that.
Yes,
Suhas,
yes,
I'll
yes.
come to that. Suhas, you wrote that article. Let's talk about the Myanmar conundrum. Do most of the experts fail to see what's happening in Northeast because they start excluding other areas? Do we need to broaden our understanding and relocate Manipur in the larger geopolitical context? Like Chittagong Hill Tract, Rakhine State, Presbyterian churches operating, those foreigners who got caught in the northeastern border.
Mizoram border.
Yes.
I think we have to get the bigger picture. The bigger picture is how could an institution like Tatmadaw, the Burmese junta, could collapse. If we understand how did they collapse, then I think it's easier for us to understand the situation. They collapsed simply because there is a concurrence between the Americans as well as the Chinese on the issue of Myanmar, and that is to destabilize the Myanmar. So once the Myanmar military junta has collapsed, so it's basically every armed group taking over certain territories and operating there. And now, when these operations took place, how is it possible that certain armed groups take over the entire country? Who provided the arms? Obviously, it is not the government of India. So it has to be done either by the Chinese or the Americans, or the Chinese providing the arms, Americans we are providing the funds to such an extent that the junta collapsed in a year and a half time, and they are not going to get back the territories. So who is the most affected party of this falling of Myanmar? It's the government of India, because of the territories, the northeast and insurgencies which we have. And now in this process, what we have is basically we have managed conflict. So we have, for example, ceasefire agreements, suspension of operations with number of groups. So we do not have an active conflict, but the risk when you have certain armed groups in this type, then they could actually get activated very easily. And I think the recent attacks on the Assam Rifles is a reflection of that. And now, for example, if we look at it, in say, for example, Chittagong Hill Tracts. Chittagong Hill Tracts is not an isolated place. It is part of Bangladesh. So we have the entire Bangladesh, which is destabilized. And because of the destabilization of Bangladesh, we have actually now the Pakistanis who have entered, including the Chittagong Hill Tracts and etc. It's known to everybody. And I think what we have done so far is we have been, I think, not taking the proactive actions. We have been basically reacting to the developments. In fact, if you look at it, say, for example, last 2 days back, the Chinese Foreign Ministry had issued a warning saying that the marriages in Bangladesh cannot be undertaken by the Chinese nationals. Otherwise, they will be arrested under the trafficking charges and etc. Way back in 2024, in January, I had written that from the Chittagong Hill Tracts, thousands of girls, including thousands of the Chakma girls, they are married off to the Chinese. So I, at that point of time, had written that the Chittagong Hill Tracts is almost becoming little China in Bangladesh through marriages. And it is continuing to such an extent that when the Chinese Foreign Ministry issues an advisory saying that this kind of marriages are taking place, it means it has reached a proportion which nobody in India actually knows. And that's why I wrote the article. So I think we have to understand that because of the situation in Pakistan, say for example, we are not involved in whatever happening in Pakistan, but Pakistanis would like to believe that everything is done by the Indians. So once they believe everything is done by the Indians, they will come back to the Chittagong Hill Tracts and through the northeast, and we should not be surprised. Actually, the insurgency, which is dormant or which has been dormant for the last 10, 15 years, actually get a new lease of life very soon. And it would depend on actually how the situation in Bangladesh develops. So we have failed Myanmar, failed Bangladesh, because even if it's stable at this point in time, Bangladesh, it's failed because if you do not allow the Awami League, there is going to be some kind of massive uprising from the citizens at some point of time. So when you have failed states on the Eastern Front, that becomes more precarious than the Western Front. But our attention usually is that only Eastern Western Front is important. I would say Eastern Front is more vulnerable. And now, final point: if the China, Myanmar, and Bangladesh economic corridor takes place, I mean, up to the Chittagong tracks and the with the Mongla port being given to the Chinese, what is left?